I made a video this week which got a whole lot of controversy. It was around the one around Altseason, and specifically the one where I said that I don't think we're going to get another Altseason in 2025, and maybe even not again, to be honest. And that video, as you can imagine, stirred a whole lot of controversy. Today, we're going to dig into that with two very special guests, VCs, and we're going to ask them whether they agree with my theory around whether or not there's going to be an Altseason. I think you're going to be shocked at what they actually say. So if that sounds good to you, obliterate the like button. If you're not already subscribed to the channel, what the hell are you waiting for? This over come on, are we at 1.15? 1.15, come on, 1.15, 1.149 million subscribers. So if you're not part of the team or part of the gang, join the gang and let's get the show on the road, guys. Talk about a lot of hate, a lot of controversy. People don't like it when you tell them what you think and if it doesn't suit their narrative. But you know what? I'm going to stick to my thesis around this altcoin season. I'm going to try and explain it to you guys again, and then we're going to dig into it with a couple of my guests. So the way I define Altseason is when altcoins as a collective outperform Bitcoin. Not when some sectors outperform Bitcoin, but when most altcoins actually land up outperforming Bitcoin. And in order for that to happen, you need, on a relative basis, you need more money to flow into altcoins than into Bitcoin. Now, I want to just explain that concept to some people, because some people seem not to understand what I mean on a relative basis. If you look at the market cap of Bitcoin, the fully diluted market cap of Bitcoin is $2 trillion. And the fully diluted market cap of ETH is $410 billion. On a relative basis, if I were to put $200 million into ETH, or let's put it like this. If I were to put $200 million into Bitcoin, that would mean 10% of its total fully diluted market cap. But if I were to take the same $200 million and put it in $200 billion and put it into ETH, that would mean that I'm putting in 50% more capital, which means on a relative basis, ETH is getting a lot more inflow, not on an absolute basis. And so in order to have an Altseason, what you need relatively more capital to flow into altcoins than into Bitcoin. Problem is that we have two big pipes which are bringing capital into Bitcoin at the moment. The first one is Michael Saylor. So you got the Saylor tracker, and you can see with the Saylor tracker that Michael Saylor has actually poured $29 billion into Bitcoin. And then you got the ETFs. So if you look at the ETFs, you got the ETFs, and they've poured in something like $30 or $40 billion into Bitcoin. When you add that up, you say, okay, in the last couple of months, the last 8 months, $60 billion has flowed in from these operators. And then you got to ask yourself a question. Relatively, how can around $40 billion flow into altcoins? And the answer is it's going to be very, very, very difficult to do that. And so that's why I think that in this kind of market environment, the idea is that all altcoins will act, not all, altcoins will actually do well, exactly like the altcoins are actually doing today. But will they all do well relative to Bitcoin as a collective, like we saw in previous cycles? I don't know if that's going to happen, and if it does, it's great. But remember, it doesn't mean that altcoins aren't going to perform. Altcoins will perform, and you'll make fortunes on altcoins. But as a collective, I don't think you're going to get a crazy altcoin season where total 3 goes up as high as we can. Anyway, that video's got a lot of controversy and a lot of hates. And today I want to speak to two of my VC friends. So guys, welcome. Tom, welcome. Joey, welcome. Good to see you guys again. I bounced the theory off the community yesterday. And the theory is that Altseason is when altcoins the altcoins as a collective outperform Bitcoin, right? I mean, we agree on that, right? Okay, so if that's the case, and we define Altseason like that, then Altseason can only happen when relatively more money flows into altcoins than into Bitcoin on a relative basis. So let's just use ETH and Bitcoin. Bitcoin has a $2 trillion valuation. ETH has a $300 billion valuation. You'd need a 6 times multiple to flow into ETH into Bitcoin, very simplistically speaking. Do we agree on that?
I would personally have a slightly different definition if we consider some of the huge catalysts we have for Bitcoin. If Bitcoin suddenly 5x's because we get a strategic reserve in the next few weeks, months, days, or hours, if alts perform in line with that broadly as a macro asset, together, and then you have individuals that go up and down. I think that could still be considered a strong alt season.
But hold on.
Just Bitcoin is also performing really well.
Let's just stick to the definitions. Like, let's say for alt, I know definitely some alts will outperform Bitcoin and will outperform Bitcoin by a lot. Solana has, et cetera, but I'm talking about like altcoins. I'm talking about an alt season that looks like the alt seasons that we're used to. And I'm trying to put up a chart. Those are the alt seasons that we're used to. When you compare the alts to Bitcoin, they outperform Bitcoin as a collective by about 5-1 in a certain period, or in this case, about 11-1 in a certain period. Now, for me, for that to happen, you would need to get relatively more money flowing into altcoins than into Bitcoin. Now, for that to happen, we would need relatively more money than MicroStrategy is bringing in, plus the ETFs are bringing in, to flow into Bitcoin relative to the altcoins. Now, I just don't see a way that with all these new avenues and all these new kinds of investors into Bitcoin, I don't see the altcoins as an asset class outperforming Bitcoin by 5-1. I see specific individual altcoins. Of course, you're going to have the outliers, you're going to have the Solanas, you're going to have the 𝗬𝗎s, you're going to have everything else. But do you think that we're going to get an altcoin as we used to define altcoins in the previous 2 cycles?
I have two quick thoughts here. One, I agree that we don't see, I'd be surprised if alts outperform by like 5x or whatever, like, historical cycles. I do think we'll see some outperformance. In my mind, the way I would define kind of like the relative flow question in my mind, I don't think you actually need more flows than like flow into Bitcoin. I would view it more as like a market cap standpoint. So if you look at Bitcoin, and you look at whatever exact percentage, Bitcoin dominance is, I think it's high 50s or something. If you see kind of less money flow into Bitcoin on a relative basis, relative to its market cap in this space, and more flow into alts, I think that's enough to get an alt season. But you could still have like more, total dollars flowing into Bitcoin and still see alts outperform just because their market caps are from a smaller base. So that's sort of my view.
That's why I used the word relative, because it's all it's relative to your market cap. So you just need more inflows relative to your market cap, one versus the other. And I just don't see with these new pipes that are filling up the Bitcoin bucket, MicroStrategy, nation states, potentially a strategic reserve. I just don't see how on a relative basis altcoins get a bid compared to Bitcoin, and certainly not a 5x bid relative to Bitcoin, which we had in the previous cycle. I hope I'm wrong, but I think it's going to be. But I do think I just can't see the path to it, and maybe it's a good thing, because usually when people give up on the alt season, that's when it actually happens, right? So.
Alt season in the past has been relatively concentrated too, because we've had so many less tokens. This time we have 10x plus more tokens than we had in the previous cycle. So it's going to be a selective alt season. It's not alt season won't come, but it's not going to be everything go up with a 2x beta to Bitcoin like we had before.
I'm glad you brought that up, because that's another one of the factors. Like, you have Pump Fund. Pump Fund's launched 6.5 million tokens. And then you got virtuals. And then you got all the Pump Fund competitors. And you just think about like the number of people that are coming into the space, and number of people times money that they bring in, divided by number of tokens launched in the space, compared to the same calculation in 2021, where it was much harder to launch a token. Like, you didn't have Pump Fund. You needed like basic coding skills to do tokens. Now, 6 million new tokens in a couple of months on one platform. I mean, money has to go into all those tokens, and it does. You may say not a lot, but even if it's $1,000 into a token, that's like huge money, right? So,
yeah, I think so. What we're all looking for is like net new capital into the space, more on-chain users who are going to be able to purchase a lot of these altcoins. I think the primary driver of Bitcoin price action from now going forward is going to be institutions, governments, and via ETFs. So you need new people on chain to actually purchase these things. If we look at the most recent event that would catalyze a lot of this, is that Trump meme coin launch that we all either profited from or cried about last week. The people who actually purchased that, 50% of those had never actually purchased a Solana altcoin before, and 50% of those actually created a wallet that day. So that means net new users who came on chain actually just to purchase that Trump meme coin. So is that a catalyst for similar events going forward? Perhaps, maybe not. But these are the sort of, well, optically it wasn't great, events that we need to get new people on chain, new interesting use cases, yes. But those are the kind of people we need to actually kick off an alt season.
So I'll give you an interesting stat. Total market cap never increased, and total 3 also never increased. So all that money was just rotation, and the people that came in were so insignificant that they actually caused the money just came out from the the pool of tokens that we're in. The money just came from all the other tokens, and that was why we had such a massive liquidity drain on all the other tokens. I did read this, that Moonshot onboarded 187,000 users, but these are $50 users and $100 users and $40 users that are onboarded, and they're not the real capital that's actually coming in, I guess. Under the assumption that we may or may not get an alt season, I think we're in disagreement there. Joey, I want to talk to you about ETH, because I know that I think you've been a little bit more bullish than the rest of us on ETH. It has been trading like a stable coin. A lot of like whispers around, I don't know if it's whispers, but just general lack of leadership, I would say. Not lack of leadership, because I think people are starting to get frustrated by the protocol. What makes you so bullish?
Yeah, I mean, I think when I think about ETH, I think it's taken a very different approach to scaling than what you've seen on Solana. But I think sort of over the long run, I do think this kind of layer 2 scaling roadmap will work. I think kind of the final piece that is still relatively clunky is bridging assets across different L2s, because that makes it feel like sort of like totally separate networks, which they basically are today. Obviously, they can settle back to ETH and things like that, but the bridging piece is kind of what's most complicated. I do think we'll eventually have, there's a bunch of different proposals on this, whether it's using kind of zero knowledge proofs or other different ideas where you can basically have the bridging happen, in a block or two, versus today, there's, even if you withdraw from the L2, there's a 2-week challenge period or 1-week challenge period, depending on the L2. And so basically you have all these bridges that basically front capital, but there's like a relatively, meaningful cost of capital to that. And so I think that's kind of like the big thing that I think is an issue. I think the other issue is kind of the other reason people are frustrated is more from an economic standpoint. Like if you look at, ETH burn or lack thereof over the last year, there was this big economic change when ETH kind of added the blob market, and the blob capacity is starting to fill up more and more, but it's not full enough where you actually see kind of meaningful ETH burn, which I think is like probably the biggest reason why, from like an investor standpoint, you look at ETH and you kind of look at like how much ETH is being burned and all these narratives that existed, a couple of years ago, and they just haven't really panned out. And I think the last thing is, you look at kind of the whole meme coin thing. It's essentially happening for the most part exclusively on Solana.
Can I challenge you with something? It was a tweet that I made a long time ago, and I said, like, I came to the conclusion that ETH are a bunch of people that are working, very, very smart people that are working really, 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 really hard to solve a problem that's already been solved by Solana and by 𝗬𝗎 and by everybody else. Like you can do everything you want to do on a fast layer 1 blockchain on the actual chain. Why do we need to try and solve this bridging problem why do I need to solve the bridging problem on the L2s if I can just go and do it on Solana cheap and fast? We've proven that it works. Like, why expend all this time, effort, energy, money, resource? It almost feels like you're trying hard, not you, but the devs are trying hard to solve something that's been solved already.
The Ethereum ethos, and I think it comes a lot from the Bitcoin ethos, is decentralization, maximum decentralization, maximum censorship resistance, which they've taken as you need to be able to run this device on your Raspberry Pi, which I think is somewhat unreasonable. And these other ecosystems have taken that down a notch, right? $1,000 laptop, $2,000 laptop, whatever is still a reasonable bar. And they've achieved levels of decentralization that I think a lot of us would consider reasonable. Now, Ethereum Foundation sort of thinks differently. But in doing so, they've also somewhat centralized Ethereum on some of these L2s today. So now Base is actually the biggest L2 by the widest margin. So 80% of Ethereum transactions the last few days have happened on Base. So Ethereum is actually centralizing onto Base and a few other ecosystems. Now, if the L2-centric roadmap continues, we have these interops between bridging, and we sort of form this new layer great. Ethereum could progress. I'm hopeful that'll happen. But I think there's a clear disconnect between what the Ethereum Foundation wants and what the broader community wants, and what levels of decentralization are actually acceptable to users today, and trade-offs for UX that you need to get for that decentralization.
And what do you think, Joey?
Yeah, I think there are definitely trade-offs, and I actually agree with the Raspberry Pi thing is too far. Like in my mind, it should be like, can you run it on relatively state-of-the-art, like souped up MacBook Pro, and that's good enough in my mind for decentralization. I don't think it needs to run on like $100 Raspberry Pi. I think the one kind of pushback I'd have against some of the Solana stuff is like, one of the drawbacks of being monolithic is that when stuff goes down or breaks, like there's not really any alternative place to go. Like when I was trading the Trump meme coin, I was actually at the crypto ball, and bought it because it's either a scam or it's legit, and it'd been up a while and hadn't been taken down. And as my attitude was like, well, everyone else is just talking to people at this ball, so I'll just pull out my phone and hop on Phantom and buy some.
Well done, bro.
Because they're probably
well done,
gonna
bro.
like get home. But like it took like 6 or 7 transactions to get through. And so I think there are some things that need to be fixed. I think Solana probably can fix that. Like there's no like theoretical technical reason why you can't fix those issues. But I think at the end of the day, it's just two very different approaches to scaling, that both have like pros and cons to them. And then I do think. Go ahead.
Where would you put your money? I mean, which one would you put more money into? Let's just go straight to the point. Which one would you put more money into?
Yeah, I mean, I currently have more. Well, most of my money is in alts right now. I am actually a firm believer in that we'll see an Altseason. But outside of that, if it comes to like ETH versus Solana, I think my relative weighting is like 26% Solana, and then 75% ETH, something like that.
Wow. Okay. Wow, that's big. Tom, how do you see capital allocation?
We've been vocally overweight Solana for almost 2 years now, so it's been a very big position for us. Our second biggest position is ETH. We think those two are the biggest winners throughout the cycle. So I'm still hopeful there's a big mean revision trade for ETH. I think one important point here, though, and actually Justin Sun brought this up when he put this tenets out for how Ethereum Foundation could sort of improve, is he mentioned price. So he mentioned $10,000 as like shelling point for these changes he wanted to catalyze. And the Ethereum Foundation has never cared about price. So Solana and the ecosystem talk more about price, but what price means is for a token means more economic security. So price should be an important factor in the consideration for your token, because as it goes down, your network actually gets less secure, and your ecosystem and what you have to spend on builders and developers, especially if the Ethereum Foundation is selling to actually incentivize those things, goes down. So price needs to be an important input, and it seems the Ethereum faithful, at least outside of the Twitter sphere, sort of don't take price as an input, even though in highly financialized markets where we have this pure expression of capitalism that is crypto, price is a huge determinant and something that we need to actually take into account. So there's been a lot of changes over the last few days in Ethereum. Hopefully they can get there, but yeah, I still think Solana is the biggest winner out of the alt ones this cycle. Interesting,
because you guys have slightly different views. Joe, you mentioned that you're very overweight altcoins. And I like to hear that, because I'm also very overweight altcoins, and I kind of want to compare what we're holding. So when you say you're very overweight altcoins, talk to me about some of the narratives that you're invested in. Talk to me about some of the tokens that you're looking at. Tom, we're going to come to you as well. Same thing.
Yeah, on my end, I think one of my largest positions is actually in like 𝗚𝗏𝗡. I sort of put that on kind of basically mid last year when the market had kind of really tanked and there's all this fear. And the thesis behind that one is very simple. It's just sort of like, I actually use it. Like it works. I actually borrow against some of my crypto that I used to then trade stocks with, because I don't want to sell crypto to buy equities. And B, they have quite dominant market share. So I think that's one of the positions I have that's pretty sizable. I do own, some stuff that I put on sort of for like more of a kind of a catalyst trade. Like I have a uni position that I think, I think that'll do well when they launch their uni chain, and also Uniswap v4, which I think both those things should happen any month now this year. And then the other kind of category of positions I have, let's see, I own Hyperliquid because I farmed that basically, and then bought a little bit more at launch. But
what do you think of the trade versus the valuation? So like we'd say the trade versus valuation. The chain's got the killer app. The killer app is the DEX. The DEX seems to be amazing. It's got some really cool features. I think the ticker auction is quite a cool feature, and there are a few other good features. But it has got a $20 billion fully diluted valuation, right? How do you would you be entering at these prices if you hadn't farmed it?
I mean, I bought a little bit more in the kind of low 20 range. I think, I probably wouldn't be like adding a massive position here or whatever, just because I tend to be kind of I'm a more conservative investor in the sense that like I will try to buy things when I feel like they're really undervalued, and then I'll hold them for quite a long time. But I think like adding a lot here, feels a bit expensive. But on the flip side, they have really dominant market share in the decentralized perp space. B, they have this new layer one that's going to be launched. It's really fast. They have great narrative around it. There's a massive community around it. And it sort of feels like...
How do they make it so fast? I understood, I haven't dug into technology, but I understood that this was Cosmos SDK, right? Is this not built on the Cosmos stack?
Yeah, it's built on the Cosmos stack. They forked it and made a bunch of changes to it. I mean, I think you will see some performance decrease as you decentralize it, right? Like right now, it's a relatively small number of nodes. But they have made a lot of changes to it where like it actually works quite well as a perp stacks, and I think there's other things that you could launch on it.
It's amazing.
Trading based that would also do well.
Tom, let's hear some of yours. We'll come back to Joey. So first of all, what do you think of the Hyperliquid trade?
So Hyperliquid, I think, is a 500 million annualized revenue from just, who knows if the past few days will hold up. Maybe if you consider a broad altcoin season will happen, potentially those numbers could be sustainable or move higher. So the PE for that is, pretty decent still at a high valuation. The user experience is materially better, but I think folks forget quickly with such a very short time space in our brains. We're like goldfish here. Like GMX, remember, was a very similar story, maybe not to the same extent, but folks are saying the same thing. Huge amount of revenues, amazing experience. Everyone's using it. Token mechanism was certainly different, but could Hyperliquid be that sort of same story? Potentially. So,
it's a major improvement though. I use both. I use GMX and I use Hyperliquid. You can't compare. Like honestly, you can't. I don't think I can go back to the current GMX product after having used Hyperliquid. No way.
Sure, but the step change of what in that period of time it was. So, I probably wouldn't be a buyer at these levels. In terms of us, what we're looking at, I like Joey's idea of revenue, potentially generating tokens, particularly with this new administration, right? So 𝗬𝗂𝗡, Maker, others that potentially could, and Uniswap potentially could start returning capital to investors through some of these new mechanisms. Great idea. I think for us, the Solana altcoins are particularly ones who are capturing on the meme coin cycle without directly having to bet on meme coins are really interesting. So like, Radium, Drift, a few of those other ones are really interesting.
But even at these valuations, like Radium's now like over $8, like at over $8, would you still be adding to your bags, or would you say, look, maybe? I'm in Radium very, very, very early, relative, probably like, under $2 is I think where we entered. But I don't know, when I look at this thing at $8.30, it's not cheap anymore.
Yeah, cheap is a relative term, right? If the market cap of all Solana coins in the ecosystem goes up by 5 to 7x this year, you can bet that these that capture some level of revenue and trading activity are going to do pretty well, particularly those that are the market leaders. So relatively, I think they're still pretty good deals if you're going to bet that Solana is going up, that meme coins are going to increase, that we're going to see this bigger casino as the market goes up. Compared to where they started, of course, not relatively the same price, but I think still a lot of room to run for those.
Let's talk about AI agents. massive narrative, picked up, I think, $16 billion worth of market cap, $15 billion worth of market cap if we look at it. Real or garbage? Like, have the crypto bros capitalized on a new narrative by adding a token to something that's completely commoditized, or is there actually real value in these AI agents? Joey, what do you think? And I'm keen to know if you're invested in any of it.
It's a good question. I mean, I think I'm not invested in any of the public markets ones. There's a couple investments we've made on the private side that are sort of in the AI and crypto intersection. One of them, but neither of them are announced, but I can describe them at least at a high level. One of them is a thing that basically lets users basically really easily kind of like automatically execute trades on centralized exchanges currently, and they're launching a product for DeFi as well. So the idea is kind of like you just text it what you want it to do, and it will kind of do it automatically for you. You can set up certain triggers, that sort of thing.
What's it
called? It's kind of like a basic AI agent. It's not announced. I can't say that one.
Okay, fair enough.
But so I think like that's interesting. They're doing like a meaningful amount of monthly revenue. I also think the AI stuff where people are building kind of like I kind of hate the term DePin, but like these decentralized marketplaces where you can do like training kind of across kind of multiple basically like small data centers. I think is interesting. But I haven't really traded like the AI compute tokens, or the AI agent tokens like virtuals and AI 16Z or stuff like that.
What do you think, Tom? Real narrative or bunch of crypto hot air?
So this goes to a broader theme of hyper specialization. I think is going to be really important. We see in other industries. I mean, you have equities analysts who specialize in financials or industrials or whatever. I think you're going to start seeing more and more of this in crypto as we professionalize it as an industry. You have folks who are now focused on DePin, focused on gaming, and funds that have sprung up around this. You're going to have very similar folks in AI who are specialized researchers. Right now in crypto, I think we're all playing a little,
vague,
pretend
broad,
right now. Crypto is the intersection of very complex economic mechanisms, very complex, cryptography mechanisms, and now we're going to throw on artificial intelligence and more complex computer science than like 99% of us can understand. Like, there's 0% chance 99% of people understand, the difference between the 𝗚𝗓𝗡 framework and others. Like, the differentiation points between a lot of these things are primarily going to be on marketing and how big of an evangelist and a leader they have for the short term. If you're actually trying to make like fundamental bets on these things, you need to be super specialized, but still understand like the marketing is going to lead the day in a lot of these actual individual assets, which is, for us, we've had a bit of trouble actually allocating to any of them because the hype cycles are so crazy. I mean, you saw, as you mentioned earlier, when this Trump coin launched, AI coins went down like 60 or 70% and still have like had trouble recovering. So like you're in for a wild ride if you're punting on these things right now.
Yeah. Okay. Joey, I wanted to ask you about Pengu. I know you're very bullish on pudgy penguins. I wonder how bullish you are on them relative to, in the context of a meme coin and community coin, whatever you want to call it. What do you think? What do you think of Pengu and the launch?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. I own a few meme coins, and they're kind of all meaningfully sized positions. I'd say the few that I own are like Doge, 𝗓𝗓𝗓. I guess Trump is sort of like a half size position, and then Pengu. I think on the meme coin thing, I think it's one of those things where just like in general, society's become kind of this much more like betting culture, right? And if you're buying something in crypto and you don't want to do too much diligence or research, like it's much easier to understand Doge,
Pengu, yeah.
i.e. it's a meme that or Pengu, it's a cute penguin, than it is to like sit down and, as Tom mentioned, pull up, what's the revenue look like historically for 𝗚𝗡𝗡, and, is 𝗚𝗡𝗡 expensive or undervalued right now, and all these things. And so, yeah, I own a Pengu position. I actually think they're pretty unique among kind of crypto projects that involve like memes and NFTs, from the standpoint that they have a lot of like physical real world presence. like even down in Puerto Rico, like if you go to Walmart at the end shelf space, you will see like stuffed pudgy penguins that you can buy, and you can scan a QR code and get like a free pudgy NFT alongside of it, which is kind of unique in the sense that like I guess the only other meme coin that has like real world distribution is probably Doge, just from the standpoint that Elon talks about it. Like the Doge government agency logo literally has, I think they changed it due to some copyright thing, but it's basically a Doge dog. So that it's a very simple thesis, but that's why I own a position.
Okay. Tom, what do you think? I mean, are you still interested in meme coins? Like, I must say, I lost interest. I've completely lost interest. There were too many, and it just they became commoditized, and I don't get it anymore.
I'm like physically scarred from Penguin, Pengu, and Pudgies. I bought it at like 1 ETH, a Penguin, and I sold it at 2 ETH, thinking I made the greatest trade in the world. And
you did.
It was amazing.
You made 100% profit, bro.
20 ETH now. It's just like I can't even. I actually muted Pudgy Penguins on Twitter because I just can't emotionally do it. But yeah, in terms of like broader meme coins, I think it's basically like you need to be there first. You need to be in like the alpha chats. You need to be like 24/7 finding the contracts before others. Like, this Trump one that Joey mentioned, the same thing he did. I was like, I saw it on Twitter. I verified it was like sort of real. I took the amount of money I was willing to lose and I bought it at 5. And like, if it went to 0, sort of what it is what it is. And you do a few of those and hopefully you make some money. But like actively trading these things besides the quote unquote majors, like Doge and others that have these.
Do you still see a fundamental thesis for meme coins? Like, I kind of get it. It's not something I really want to participate in, to be honest. I almost feel guilty holding something that doesn't have value. I don't know if it's just me.
So if we talk about meme coins that are based on like the latest, thing Trump said in a speech, or the latest cool, cute meme or GIF or dog or whatever, like probably not. But, meme coins, attention economy has gotten sort of this trending sort of zeitgeist thing that people are coalescing around as what meme coins are. Meme coins could be things that don't accrue revenue, but could meaningfully represent ownership in something that you may not directly be able to buy. So if Taylor Swift launches a token, or Harvard launches a token, or whatever, if folks want to participate and say, I own part of that, I think those meme coins, as long as everyone's eyes wide open, are interesting and probably part of a new like capital stack for these people. In terms of, not debt, not equity, not, selling CDs, but hey, I can launch this. And whether or not I have any moral judgments on that don't really matter, because it's now in the zeitgeist and people just saw that Trump just made $40 billion or whatever. So it's going to happen.
I mean, we're living in a simulation. I must say, you were at the crypto ball, but I woke up on Saturday and I saw this and I was like, when I confirmed that it was, the likeliness of it was that it was real, I was like, I just can't believe this. Like, and then when Melania launched, that was like, you gotta be kidding me. Like, soon we're gonna get Barron, we're gonna get Eric, we're gonna get Trump Jr. All right, so what else are we looking at? So Joey, you've given us some, Tom, you've given us some. What else, what other narratives, what other tokens are interesting at the moment? Tom, you gotta give us something, bro. Something like some real dirty, stinky alpha.
No, you hate it on DePin. So I mean, for us,
no, I like DePin. I like DePin.
Okay.
I like DePin.
One of our biggest focus for us as an investor has been DePin for quite some time, and from my time at 𝗓𝗧cie is something that we've focused on for a while. So Peak is one of our biggest positions, which is an L1 for DePins, have a number of different protocols. One of the primary protocols on Peak, I'd say Silencio is launching tomorrow. We're investors there. Again, full disclosure, really like them. A number of other.
Why are you so bullish on Peak? Like, I'm an investor too. Just full disclosure, I'm an investor too. Just keen to understand why you're so bullish on the chain. What it is about this specialized L1 that is made for DePin that you like so much. Just interested to get your thesis.
Yeah, for us, it's that you actually enable a machine economy, leveraging individual transactions for every action on the peak network. And you could see this with Silencio as a great example. They settle and track every transaction on the network versus Solana and others that enable DePin focused networks, but do it at the top level in aggregate batching transactions versus individual, machine IDs. And you could just imagine what that enables in terms of, tracking shipments and packages all the way down to tracking individual noise or other data, and what folks can do with that, how they can resell that data, etc. So in terms of a meta play on the space more broadly for DePin, and as Joey mentioned, the term kind of sucks. I think Peak is an interesting one that we really like.
So Silencio, which launches, just for anyone who doesn't know, that's the app that, or the protocol that measures noise in certain areas. And so when, like, for example, Zillow, when you're looking at a house, you'd get decentralized data of how noisy the suburb is. Is that a good summary of what it is? It's a decentralized way of capturing noise levels.
To start, and it's sort of a Trojan horse for utilizing all the devices in your phone. They have 700,000 active users already. Using one of the new platforms, fundraising platforms, Legion, they had 110 million in demand for their 500K allocation, which is crazy. So you're going to start to see a lot of these and they can resell that data to a number of folks. Noise data onwards to other data you can use from your phone. So you're going to see a lot of these that are popping up, actually providing real world utility, solving the cold start problem, capturing data locally in markets that, really high density, high cost systems really can't do in traditional Web 2. Grass is another great example of that, and a number of other data center type plays. So not just Silencio, it's just one that's coming up that I thought the audience might be interested in, but really bullish on that sector and think it's just going to spiral. But to my earlier point, it's one that has probably 10 different sub verticals in it. Now it's not just DePin. It's like, there's solar, there's data, there's whatever. So
the one thing, I'm an investor in Peak. I like it. I love the team more than anything. The one thing that I just can't, and I know I should be able to get over this, but it's built in Substrate, and that's like 𝗚𝗂𝗡, bro. And I just can't why did you build it in Substrate? Like, what did you gain building it in Substrate? Like, how many people can actually do this now? Yeah. Joey, interested to get something from you, some real stinky alpha.
Yeah, let's see. Trying to think here. Most of the kind of bigger liquid positions I mentioned. I guess one other one that I have, it's kind of an old school position. I never really owned it very much back in the day, but I put some on this fall, was Chainlink.
I also put some.
I think it's like very, very simple thesis. A bunch of groups own it. Like, I don't know if people have seen that meme online where it's like, what coins are made in the US that have like a grayscale product, are part of the Coinbase 50 thing, and then that Trump's World Liberty has bought, and Chainlink is like the one that all four have overlap there. And just a lot of people use it. So I think it's like one of those positions that's like, it's kind of a simple idea, but I don't know, in public markets, I think, you can make the easiest way to make money is with really simple ideas. And then you can also have like the gigabrain, very, very smart idea, but the simplest ones often play out faster because the rest of the market can understand it too.
What about 𝗚𝗓𝗧? 𝗚𝗓𝗧 was like the darling, like it was like a darling launch. Hasn't really done much. Keen to know if any of you guys are invested, if any of you guys have a thesis around it. I know Chris Boniski's like pretty bullish around 𝗚𝗓𝗧, but it just doesn't do much. Either of you have a view?
I don't get it. I haven't gotten it. No one's been able to explain it to me. I don't really see the differentiation points or the revenue accrual, or the token value is crazy. I don't get it. And I've tried to ask many people, and it's just kind of like trust me, bro stuff. So I don't know. Maybe I'm missing something.
You don't like trust me, bro. All right,
I don't really have a view either.
All right, give me one more each. Tom, I'm coming to you first, sir. One more each. Let's make it fair.
So overweight Solana primarily, and Solana ecosystem tokens, overweight DePin.
𝗬𝗎?
𝗬𝗎, I don't really have a firm view on, to be honest. I'm not sure why it's done so well versus Aptos versus the others. Doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to me. I certainly wouldn't be a buyer at these levels. I guess more broadly, like the new generation of L1s, I'm somewhat bearish on all these new ones that are coming, Berachain and Mega ETH and all these others like Movement Labs, etc. I just don't know how many more L1s we could do at 10 billion plus valuations when we have, as Joey mentioned, a lot of it, or you mentioned earlier, a lot of these problems already solved for or on the roadmap to being solved for. It seems like sort of just like a hot ball of money moving into the next thing. So I would say bearish all of those new assets more broadly.
I'm broadly bullish Berachain. You mentioned it. The reason why I like it is because it's the first time that I've seen. I've seen lots of L1s and they're all innovating on TPS and throughput and latency and stuff like that. Berachain is innovating on an economic layer. So it's just the way that they allocate the economics and what you have to do with the economics. And to me, like, I think we've experimented a lot in transactions and throughput and stuff like that. And I think where we haven't experimented enough is trying new economic models on L1s. And I think Berachain kind of does that. And that's why I'm pretty excited just to see how the experiment plays out. I mean, they seem to be a good team. They seem to be getting all the right hype. Let's see how this economic model plays out. If the economic model plays out and they can actually get the TVL to get into all the applications and stuff like that, then there may be a case.
I don't know, man. 𝗏𝗏 said it, and I kind of agree. They took 2+ years to build an EVM fork. I don't know.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
Joey, what do you think, sir? One more dirty DGen stinky play.
I think a kind of interesting play that I own some of that sort of just kind of last week bounced off the weekly trend is Render. It's like kind of public markets exposure to the crypto AI narrative, and I think I think it'll probably outperform from a narrative standpoint as we see this wave of new models that comes out later this quarter. Like when you see 𝗏𝗏 Mini, 𝗏𝗏, Anthropic has a bunch of new models. There's going to be all these new computer use models as well coming out in the next number of months. So I think Render would be my pick there.
Yeah, I invested in. I'm actually in the midst of doing a deep dive into all the distributed GPU projects. So, spoken to Render, spoken to Akash, spoken to 𝗏𝗏𝗡, spoken to from IONET. Really trying to understand like the lay of the land and what in this distributed GPU game, who's going to win. And I must say, I'm learning a hell of a lot. It's a very, very interesting game. I do hold Render. I mean, Render hasn't specifically gone out into the AI game. So they're still very much, I know they can do it, but they're very much focused on rendering. And I think that their big move would right now, if they want to play into narrative, needs to be some kind of like big AI play. I don't know if that.
Yeah, I think they're working on that from what I've been able to tell from Twitter and kind of their recent posts and stuff. But yeah, if they really double down on that, I think that would be great from a narrative standpoint. And also, it's also just like many orders of magnitude bigger than the rendering market. Maybe they should change the name.
Yeah. All right, chaps. That's I think that's a lot of alpha for today. Thank you so much for being here, both of you, of course, regular guests. So thank you so much. Much love from the Banter fam. And thanks, guys. And to you guys, we'll see you guys again next week on Monday. I'm not going to do a Sunday show this week. I'll see you guys again on Monday. Until then, trade well, my friends.